Hi, I'm Mash Ponigala, brand strategist at REBEL. In this ongoing series on brand archetypes, today we're talking about the Rebel brand archetype. Now, the Rebel provokes, right? They stand out from the crowd. Like the creative, they resent conformity. However, they're more roguish or aggressive about it. They enjoy going against the grain and avoiding the mainstream. They take pride in thinking for themselves. If taken to extremes, the rebel can become self-destructive. Now, there are lots and lots of examples of rebel brands. The biggest one, of course, that comes to mind is Virgin, right? So a rebel is all about questioning the status quo. They're about taking things into their own hands to see if they can make a difference. And this could be based on ideology. This could be based on products or services that they feel need a kind of a against the grain kind of treatment. So now, when I talk about brand archetypes, for some of the brand archetypes, I say that most companies should have that one as a small percentage of their overall makeup of brand archetypes, right? But not with Rebel. With the Rebel brand archetype, you got to be careful. You cannot simply have a little bit of the Rebel brand archetype because the Rebel conflicts with and contradicts other brand archetypes. So if you're having a little bit of the Rebel, then you got to really carefully look at how it meshes and gels with the other brand archetypes in your kind of brand persona makeup, right? So you cannot just put it in there because you personally, as the stakeholder, maybe as the brand owner or the business owner, you feel that you have the rebel in you, or rather your approach to the business is radical because you're against the establishment or against the grain. Now that may be so, and that is a good idea sometimes to embrace the rebel brand archetype, but you got to look at it from a very careful perspective, in the sense that you got to check whether your brand story, your messaging aligns with this archetype, because a rebel brand archetype requires radical kind of messaging. The messaging would be different. It has to be a little provocative. Sometimes even negative connotations in terms of messaging, in terms of marketing, and so on and so forth. So you got to be really careful when you're thinking about incorporating the rebel into your brand archetype. But of course, if you feel that your product or service is a complete rebel, then that's okay. That becomes the main, primary kind of brand archetype. In terms of the rebel summary, you could say that the rebel brand can be summed up by one word: radical. They come up with truly off-the-wall products, but unlike the magician who creates just to create, the rebel is trying to solve a problem in a new way. Often, there is implication that the novel solution is common sense, or that it should have been there all along. The rebel brand then is not just innovating for the sake of innovating, they're making the world a more logical place. But there's a slight feeling of danger to this, as if they're willing to go a bit too far to get the job done. In terms of the color, burgundy is the primary kind of color recommendation. The brand promise is change. The goal, to shake things up. And the strategy is to innovate with out-of-the-box thinking, yet provide practical solutions that are in demand. So that should be your strategy. If you're taking up rebel as your brand archetype, then you gotta innovate, not just with your product or service, but also with your brand image, with your messaging, with your marketing, with customer service, with every touch point of your brand journey or your buyer's journey. It's innovating with out-of-the-box thinking, and yet providing a practical solution that would be popular. So you can't just be a rebel and throw a product or innovation out there just for the sake of it and expect people to like it. It may not always work. In fact, there are lots and lots of examples where this kind of thought process blew up in the face. For instance, the best example that comes to mind is the new Coke. Remember back in the day, Coca-Cola came up with New Coke, and it was a radical, it was a rebel. Now, of course, brand archetype, but you got to imagine, of course, that for Coca-Cola, each of their products could be a brand by themselves, right? And in fact, they are. So for Coke, when they came up with the New Coke, people didn't like it. It fell flat, sales tanked, and of course, they had to do damage control. Maybe I'll do a video one day on the whole story and how Coca-Cola tried to salvage the situation, because there are valuable lessons that you could learn in terms of how to deal with product or service failures and things like that. But in this case, the case in point is that your innovative solution or innovative marketing, whatever, has to be popular, right? I mean, it has to be in line with your target audience and their worldview. You got to innovate with out-of-the-box thinking, but you also got to be careful that it aligns with your target audience. Okay, the personality to project, the outsider, the strong silent type, the anti-conformist. The ideal customer, the rebel archetype, appeals to customers who are tired of the same old thing. They want change and they want it now. So, rebel brand archetype. Trump, yeah, he is a rebel brand archetype. Richard Branson was, Steve Jobs was, and to a certain extent, even Obama. So, you can have, if you're the brand ambassador for your brand, then if you are a rebel at heart and you feel that, then you can bring that across, and that could be a good way to balance out. If you have other brand archetype attributes, you can balance them all by you being the face of that rebel, right? While also having other messaging attributes that could be balanced, maybe a sage or whatever that fits with other aspects of your brand or your product or service and your target audience. So, what about weaknesses? They can be perceived as argumentative, confrontational, or overly dramatic. Now, these don't necessarily mean that they are terrible weaknesses, because argumentative, yeah, you don't want your brand to be argumentative. You want your brand to question the status quo, but not argumentative, right? Confrontational, well, again, it depends on what kind of confrontation it is and how you're doing it, what is the tone of your message and all that. Overly dramatic may not be such a bad thing. Sometimes you could create splash by being overly dramatic. And a great example that comes to mind is the Dollar Shave Club, right? Check out their adverts on YouTube, and they're a rebel brand, of course. And the Dollar Shave Club, their first video that went viral, and it really took that brand out of nowhere into the stratosphere, was an advert where they were overly dramatic. I mean, it's a funny ad. It caught the attention of the whole world, and it catapulted Dollar Shave Club into the big game, big leagues. So yeah, overly dramatic doesn't necessarily have to be such a bad idea. Then you're looking at some examples. Uber, yes, rebel, definitely. It went against, the traditional taxis, yellow cabs in the US or elsewhere, black cabs in London, and yeah, they shook up the market segment and they redefined, transportation and all that, and they still are at the center of lots of lawsuits and things like that. So yeah, Virgin, always. Richard Branson was a rebel, is a rebel. Virgin brand, yeah. Music television, yeah, MTV at that time, and Dollar Shave Club, yeah, one of my favorites. All right, what about the suggested color palette? Yes, burgundy, shades of burgundy here. Images, there. change and we're the sons of the ghetto and we will survive. Yeah, this is just, love who you are and things like that. So you can see it's got that kind of rebel nature to it. And example brands, again, you got Uber. No company in recent memory has generated so much ire, not inspired as much awe and loyalty as Uber has. It's got its up and downs. There's no doubt about it. But yeah, it's succeeded, right? So watch the ad. I'm not going to play it here because it's YouTube will. And Virgin, it's always pushing boundaries. Then you have MTV. Watch that advert. And finally, you have Dollar Shave Club. And this is the advert I'm talking about, right? I was referring to. So I'm going to leave a link to this page on our website, and you can check out this video, watch it on that page. And I think it's got some really good lessons on how to be overly dramatic if it matches your product or your service, right? So take a hard look. Don't just be dramatic just for the sake of it, or thinking that, Dollar Shave Club did it, we can do it. Old Spice, very dramatic, another example. But it has to really align with your audience. It has to align with, your audience's worldview, your product and service. All right. So if you are in the process of building up brand archetype and you want to consult with me, I'm going to leave a link in the description below. And book a video call where we get online one-on-one just like this. In fact, I'll be sitting in the same office in our studio, and we can talk about it, and I can then analyze your brand strategy if you have one, and then suggest the best mix of brand archetypes, and of course what kind of message, what the tone should be, so on and so forth. Do it. If you have just questions about this, right, just leave them below and I will try to answer them. Till the next brand archetype video, take care.